the 1986-87 Los Angeles Lakers, who many people consider as the strongest championship group of the Showtime Lakers era. The Lakers organization has an incredibly strong and rich history, with many greats represented by some of the greatest players of all time. Even with all those great teams considered, many people still recognize this 87 group as the greatest Laker team, or even the greatest basketball team of NBA history. No team greater represents the Lakers brand, culture, and identity than the Showtime Lakers, whose fast-paced and exciting style of play helped define an entire era of NBA basketball. Leading this group at the point guard position was none other than the incredibly dynamic Earvin "Magic" Johnson. The 6'9" point guard had the first of his 3 MVP seasons, as he was the engine that drove the Lakers' high-octane offense. With his sudden and pinpoint decision-making, all of his teammates had to be ready at all times for the easier scoring opportunities that Magic would provide for them. It was another remarkably productive year from Magic, as he averaged about 24 points, a league-leading 12.2 assists, 6.3 rebounds, and over 1.5 steals on 52.2% shooting. Simply put, it was one of the greatest dual-threat seasons the league has ever seen, as Magic wasn't just the NBA's leader in assists per game, but he was also top 10 in points per game, which is easily the highest anyone has ever ranked in scoring, while averaging at least 12 assists per game. His support in the backcourt was the underrated 6'3" shooting guard Byron Scott. Scott loved to be on the finishing end of Magic's fast break, and had a solid mid-range pull-up jumper. He didn't shoot a tremendous amount of threes, but when he did, he was one of the most efficient shooters in the entire league, as he hit 43.6% from that distance, which was the 4th best percentage in the entire league. His offensive impact should get more credit for his team's success, as he put up 17 points per game during the 86-87 regular season. Starting at small forward was the 6'9" star, big game James Worthy. James is one of the most overlooked greats of basketball history and was the perfect running mate for Magic Johnson. James loved to run the floor and score in transition, and was the most frequent beneficiary of Magic's no-look passes. That wasn't the only way he scored his points though. James was great with his back to the basket and in face-up situations with the opponent, as he had one of the quickest first steps the game has ever seen. His unique ability to find his way to the paint led him to have an elite field goal efficiency, especially at his position, as he shot 53.9% on the season. He was selected to be an All-Star for the 2nd straight season, and on the year, he averaged nearly 20 points and 6 rebounds. Starting at power forward was the young AC Green, who always played with hustle and heart, and who was a couple rebounds short of a double-double average in only 28 minutes per game. AC certainly wasn't one of the major stars on the Lakers roster, but his contribution shouldn't be downplayed, as he was solid defensively in the interior and he was very reliable at securing the boards. He's also the most dependable player of all time when it comes to availability, as AC is easily the all-time record holder for consecutive games played and only missed 3 games throughout the entirety of his career. Then of course, starting at center was the captain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. At 39 years old, Kareem certainly wasn't anywhere near his prime anymore, but his age didn't stop him from being one of the better centers of the NBA, as he poured in his 17.5 points per game and 6.7 rebounds on his typical incredibly efficient field goal percentage. Despite his age, Kareem was still very capable of finishing in the fast break, but the majority of his production came in half-court sets with his iconic skyhook shot, which, coming from the 7'2" Kareem, is probably the most indefensible shot the game has ever seen. Accompanied with their all-time great starting 5 was a powerful bench, especially concerning the first 3 players of the second unit. First off is Michael Cooper. Cooper is probably the greatest perimeter defender that no one talks about. He was incredibly tenacious with his on-ball defense and was usually the player who was assigned to contain the opponent's best perimeter scorer. For his career, Cooper made an astonishing 8 all-defense teams, and his 1987 campaign was even better, as he was that season's Defensive Player of the Year. He was one of the original 3-and-D type of players, as he shot 38.5% from three-point range on 2.8 three-point attempts per game, which, believe it or not, was actually a lot of attempts in the 80s, and he attempted the second most three-point shots that season among all NBA players. Midway through the season, the Lakers acquired Michael Thompson in a trade. He was a 6'10" center/power forward who was a finesse type of player. He was a solid scoring threat in his days before Los Angeles, averaging as many as 20 points per game. But with this all-time great Lakers squad, he would simply need to be a spark off the bench, and that's exactly what the 32-year-old did, as he chipped in with over 11 points and 5 rebounds on only 23 minutes per game. Also in the heart of the rotation was the 6'8" Kurt Rambis, who didn't have a pretty style of play, but he was another one of those players who did the little things well. He would fight for loose balls, help defend the Celtics bigs, and was always a sure thing to give 100% effort. This powerful roster of incredible individual players was a team that seemed tailor-made for Magic Johnson's skill set, as every member of the roster, including Kareem, was excellent at running the floor and pushing the tempo. I know I've alluded to this several times so far in this video, but I can't emphasize enough how uniquely fast this group was, as they treated every gained possession like it was the start of a track meet. Sometimes it almost seemed like they were completely forcing a fast break tempo, but even then, they still found ways to make it work. If they had to slow things down, they could, as Magic sometimes orchestrated the offense like a quarterback from the top of the key, and there's not many players who are better scoring options in the post than Kareem and James Worthy. Under Pat Riley's strong leadership and insatiable desire to win, this Lakers team had the league's best 65-17 record throughout the regular season. In the playoffs, no one was a challenge for them throughout the Western Conference, as they swept the Denver Nuggets in 3 games, defeated the Golden State Warriors in 5 games, and then swept the Seattle Supersonics out of the Western Conference Finals. Waiting for them in the NBA Finals was their rival and true challengers, the Boston Celtics. This was simply Los Angeles' time though, as they controlled the pace of the series and imposed their will upon Boston, defeating them in 6 games. To go along with Magic's iconic game-winning baby skyhook in Game 4, he also put up an incredibly monstrous stat line, nearly achieving the first triple-double average in NBA Finals history. It was a series performance that was so impressive that by the end of it, even Larry Bird was conceding that Magic Johnson had become the best player in the NBA. Looking at the results of this group over the 1987 season, we see that the Lakers finished with a league-best 65-17 record. They statistically had the league's best offense and the 7th best defense overall that season. They beat teams by a strong average of 9.3 points over the course of the season, and they coasted through the playoffs with a 15-3 record, represented by that season's MVP and Finals MVP, Magic Johnson. There's many GOAT-worthy teams of NBA history, but in a 7-game playoff series, this team may very well be the best of the best. As far as how they would match up against the other all-time great teams, well, I think the key would be for them to control the game's tempo, and if they were able to do that, then there's a decent chance that no one would beat them in a 7-game series, as a high-scoring and free-flowing style plays too much into the hands of this team. The key would be to get them to play in a physical half-court game, which is something the 96 Bulls or 89 Pistons may have been able to do successfully in a hypothetical matchup. So what do you think? Is the 87 Lakers the greatest team of all time? Are they even the greatest Laker team of all time? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.